Now, I'd like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Jeff Bellisario. Jeff is the Executive Director of the Bay Area Council Economic Institute, which is focused on the most critical economic and policy issues facing the 9-county Bay Area and California. He manages a team of 5 researchers with expertise in economics, public policy, and urban planning. Jeff's research on the regional economy has appeared in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, San Francisco Chronicle, and numerous other local media outlets. He holds a master's degree in public policy from the UC Berkeley Goldman School of Public Policy and a BS in finance from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Welcome, Jeff.
There's no music for the economics? What happened there? I honestly, I feel bad, right? I feel like I'm a little bit set up here. We had like the most optimistic panel ever in the morning. I think you do an amazing job. And then you bring up the economists to just depress you for the last 30 minutes. Like next time, we'll flip the agenda next time. So maybe let's keep it interactive, right? We're gonna throw out the slides all together. I wanna get to the Q&A. Who feels good about the economy? All right, feeling good? One person feels good about the economy here. So that everyone else who feels bad then? People feeling bad. Most people feeling bad, and then you don't know? Raise your hand. Okay, well bad news is I don't really know either, but we have a lot of slides that are gonna help us think about it. We at the Economic Institute, we do a lot of data analysis. We're looking at key trends. I'm gonna tell you about small businesses. I sort of want to bring Nico back up here and do like all the depressing slides. Is that okay with you? Okay, all right. So when we get there, so let's kind of just, well, first my commercial, right? Bay Area Council, it's a policy organization based in San Francisco. Yes, we work on a crazy boat. No time for questions on that though. We're working on housing, working on transportation, working on workforce development, all these things that we think are key to the region. But I make charts and graphs. Like Supervisor Corsi said there'd be charts and graphs. I'm sorry, there's charts and graphs. Like it's just what we do. So here's your roadmap. All right, we're going to talk about the current situation here. Talk about the small business footprint. We're going to talk about where you've been, where we think you're going. Talk about some things that have shifted in the last couple of years. Not too depressing here. The population problem I think is a big one here. So let's talk about population in this county. And then I think we're going to get forecasty if we can make it at the end. Am I missing anything? Anything I want to add to this? No, it's not this. It's not that interactive. No. All right. So, warning, first couple slides, way too much stuff on them. On the left side and right side, it's the same thing. This is just the snapshot of the Sonoma County economy overall, right? This is where people are employed. I think if you can read one thing on this, it's the bottom left. It's that 2/3 of your county's jobs are in what we would call population serving sectors, right? Depending on how you count it. We're going to put tourism in that bucket. That's larger than most other counties in our region, right? So you're very much focused on foot traffic, on people, whether that's the population of the county today, tourists coming in. You had this amazing panel. You're all reliant on people, right? Wine, hotels, restaurants, juice. You got to have people get that revenue, right? So that's the message in this first piece, right? Be focused on people because people are the drivers of your regional economy here. All right, so let's focus in on small businesses a little bit. On the left side, this again, same makeup, but this is the size of business of where people are employed. So the big gold piece there, that's 10 to 99 in terms of business size. But I want to focus on the under 10, right? I think that's where you're a key differentiator. Again, too many numbers, they get better, I apologize. If you look at the top 2024, Sonoma County, 82% of your businesses had fewer than 10 employees. They employed 21% of the people. If you compare that to 2005, your numbers are going up slightly, right? So the small business footprint is becoming more and more important in this county. And if you compare to the state, right, that very, very small business is a much larger concentration here in Sonoma County than other places. So I think the agenda today makes sense. You should be focused on small businesses, focused on entrepreneurs. And I think the question is, how do you really grow that ecosystem, keep that going as we maybe head into the depressing slides here where things get not so good for the economy going forward. Okay, so who are these people? Where do they work? And I think this is where the the data limitations impact us. But I can tell you that in this very small employer cohort, the less than 10, 55% of these businesses, they work in services, right? It could be professional services, and I know you probably don't want to be in that bucket, but professional service, it sounds boring, but that's what you do. Food service is in there, right? Hotels and leisure, they're going to be in there too, that's a service, right? So the big makeup here, and this is not that much different than other counties, but again, you're focused very much on people and people serving industries. These are still small businesses. This is 10 to 250 in terms of employment. You see a little bit more retail there, a little bit more manufacturing there. A lot of that's probably in the food and beverage sector with smaller companies with fewer employees. These are still small businesses, right? The definition of small business generally goes to 500. I work with 20 people, so 500 to me is like the biggest business in the world, but this is still very much the driver of your economy here in these smaller to medium-sized businesses. Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit. This is new business formations, new business applications in the US. I think that the key trend here that we see, and maybe a little bit different than previous recessions, is that there's this massive wave now across the country of people wanting to start their own business, and it hasn't gone away. It's not just a pandemic effect. Retail has been the big piece, like everyone's starting a new shop to sell whatever they crocheted during the pandemic. They're doing that. Food is a big winner here, but this is not going away, right? So there is this shift from the large employer firms into these sole proprietorships, into these startups, into these entrepreneur firms. You know, I'm going to skip this. I'll stop. You saw it already, so I can't skip it. So I do think there's a big opportunity to keep more people here. These are your commuter flows. This doesn't connect super well to small businesses, but you're losing 16,000 people every day commuting out of the county, which is not surprising. It's a more suburban area. People are going to San Francisco, they're going to the East Bay, they're going to more of the kind of job-centric hubs of the region. But you have all these opportunities now with the small business landscape to keep more of these people here, right? And as I'm going to show you, the regular economy, traditional economy is slowing. You're going to have more and more opportunity for people to be both living and working here, and a lot of that can be captured in small business. Okay, everybody's okay? I usually come here and I'm like, let's do some jokes, let's be fun, but you took all the jokes already, so let's just keep moving. All right, so we're going to get depressing now. So this is the bad portion of the rest is actually pretty bad. So let's zoom out, right? This is your overall view, right? When you look at the overall economy here, in Sonoma County is red, right? You can see if you got back to that horizontal black line, you would be fully recovered from the pandemic, but you're not. And we're not in the regional economy either. In the Bay Area, we're still trying to get back to where we were pre-pandemic in terms of total payroll employment. So yes, it's true that some of those sole proprietors, some of those entrepreneurs are not in here at all because you're not necessarily paying through traditional payroll, but this is still a good barometer of where we are. And I think why many of you raised your hands saying like maybe the economy is not so good, because it's, if you look back to 2019, it's clearly not as good. So, but if you just draw that chart in the last year, you look great. Here's my final positive chart. Sonoma County, from an employment perspective, is actually growing pretty close to the rate the United States is. A lot of that is because you're very much focused on those people-serving sectors. So you're growing very much at the rate that population might be growing around the region. But you're also not as exposed to things that are more volatile, like tech, like jobs that are maybe susceptible to automation. So that's been maybe the saving grace here in Sonoma County in the last year. You don't have all of those big employers that have really pulled back, right? You're much more focused on the small businesses here in this county. All right, so this chart has a lot of red. This is just the same thing though, but monthly, looking back 36 months. You can see you're up, you're down. Again, maybe why you don't know what's happening, because some months are great, other months are not so great. Again, this is the total employment for the county. I will say though, you're way better than San Francisco, right? And to the extent that San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara drive the regional economy, which they do, we've just seen massive job loss in the city, right? If you look at the last 36 months. The vibes are getting better across the region, but in terms of employment, we're just not seeing new jobs being produced in San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara. So that kind of leads me to believe there's a little bit more strength here, right? If you're looking for positivity, you all have fared better than other parts of the region. Okay, too many numbers here, let's skip that one. This is the change in payroll employment then for the rest of the Bay Area by sector, right? So if you look at what's growing, these are the other 8 counties. Really only health has been growing across the Bay Area, right? And we can talk about aging population here and elsewhere. You can talk about COVID. You can talk about just a move to wellness generally, but healthcare has really been the only winner if you look over the past 5 years in our region. So this is your county. Again, healthcare, a winner. But I think the message, and you might think, wine is consumption is down, but if you look at the employment in leisure and hospitality, you're winning here. So people are still out spending money. People still want to come to places like Sonoma County. You've added more jobs in this sector. Yes, there's a lot of red, right? It doesn't look great, but that's been the piece where you have had success in the last 5 years. Okay, so economic shifts, right? Let's move to just what might be going well, right? If you want to know where things are headed in a positive direction, it's actually in this sector, right? You're very, very, very reliant on leisure and hospitality, and I just told you you're adding jobs. You can say that people are drinking less wine, maybe they're spending less, maybe going to hotels a little bit less, but that sector has held up relatively well in the past few years. This looks at RevPAR. Turkey mentioned it. I'm going to have you focus just on the yellow bars here. A lot of the story for your county is you're not as bad as everywhere else, right? So the yellow bars are still negative for Sonoma, but hotel, call it revenue here, hotel revenue has held up much better than other parts of the region. The airport, right? The airport has been just a huge winner. And I think this slide and the next one, I don't necessarily know what these mean, but in terms of air travel, you're there now, right? Santa Rosa, it's on the map, Schultz Airport, like the passenger flows to the airport are way up, right? So how do you begin thinking about that to drive more of your visitation, more people in the county? Smart, way up. We shouldn't make it red here. We should make it gold or like a good color, right? A lot of these charts are red. Smart, way up in terms of ridership, right? Part of this is they've added more trains, more service, but you now have this connection to the rest of the region. So the rest of these are other transit agencies, bridges. People are moving around less in other parts of the region, but you now have this new anchor, this new piece that moves down the county, right? That connects you to the rest of the region. And I think another huge opportunity, as you're thinking regionally, right? If you're a city, if you're the county, how do you take advantage of some of these new trends and the new ways people are moving around? This is the office vacancy, right? So again, not as bad. Not as bad. This is, if you take one thing away, you're not as bad as everywhere else. So office vacancies have gone up in Sonoma County, right? But you're not San Francisco. You're not the East Bay. You're not even the South Bay, right? Offices are still filled in terms of companies using that area. Office footprint not nearly as big, but you haven't seen that massive wave away from office jobs that we have seen other places. All right, you guys are still okay? All right, we're trying to get to the Q&A, right? So this is more depressing stuff, right? So let's move through this quickly. This, I think, is the key, right? I told you you're all about population, you're about people, whether it's the people that live here or people that come, but you've been losing population, right? And this trend started pre-pandemic. It started with the fires, right, 2017. You're still not where you were back to 2016 population. We've been losing population across the region, right? We'll have a chart on housing here shortly, right? And that's the main driver. But if your small business economy is reliant on people, you gotta have more people, right? So this is really, I think, the crux of the argument. If you think long-term about this county, this region, it becomes very much about people. This chart represents who's coming, who's going, right? So the gold here, again, this is Sonoma County over time. The gold is net domestic migration, so this is in a region-to-region, state-to-state movement. The green is natural births, deaths, and the blue is foreign migration. So you've had this period now, really since 2016, where you've been losing people state-to-state, region-to-region, right? Moving out of Sonoma County. Historically, you've been relatively reliant on foreign migration to replace some of that. You had pretty good natural growth. Now nobody's having kids. You're getting older. The immigration situation in the state, in the nation, it's not the same as what it was, right? So this to me, again, like how do you flip this chart as you're thinking about broadly planning for your county. I don't know if this is depressing or not. We get a lot of depressing charts, but you're relative to the state, your home prices are not that expensive, right? You're on par with the state. Relative to the rest of the region, you're pretty cheap, right? So like, why isn't this the selling point to boost the population in Sonoma County, right? Like this should be the thing you're selling. Like, come move here. You can get the median home that has a backyard, it has 3 bedrooms, and $800,000 is a lot of money, right? But it's not $1.7 million in San Francisco. It's not 1.7 in Marin. So I think the key piece of all of this then it comes back to housing permits, right? And while Sonoma County is not Raleigh, Durham, it's not Austin, it's a bit of an unfair chart. It's not any of these places. The fact of the matter is we just haven't built the housing in our region to really keep up, right? We've already said population isn't there, so you'd say like supply demand, we don't need new housing, but we do need housing churn, right? And you can see all these places that maybe all your friends moved to, right? Austin, Texas, Raleigh, Durham, like all of these cheaper locations, they've built the housing to really accommodate that population growth. Okay, we're all still okay? I'm getting to the end. This is the boring part though. This is like the macro stuff. We're zooming out, but I'm zooming in on this gentleman's face because he's probably the most important guy around. US economy looks better than what I just showed you, right? Lots of green, but the last 3 months have produced basically, not zero, but much less employment growth than we would expect, right? So this is metric 1 that you should be tracking if you're thinking, like, where's the economy going, right? Where are interest rates going? Employment, stalled. Inflation, right? And I'm sure you've seen many of these effects within your small businesses. Inflation now is picking back up, right? It's nowhere near where we were a couple of years ago, but we're not out of the woods on the inflation side of things, right? It's still running above 2%, which would be the Fed's target. You know, and I don't necessarily see inflation going away, particularly as we talk about tariffs. Yesterday we had oil sanctions, right? A high price environment and raising price environment is going to stay with us. I've gone the whole presentation without saying AI once. Kirk, I think you said AI once. Like everybody wants to talk about AI. I think we're still very early innings in terms of AI adoption. The left side here, you can see the top 16% of all employed people are using AI right now in some way, shape, or form. That's pretty low in my view. Like not all jobs are automatable, but like that number is going to go to 50, it's going to go to 60, it's going to be embedded everywhere. So we're still very early on in terms of the AI game, but I do think AI creates kind of a cap to our job growth. So if you're looking national, you're looking global, right? And you come back to this chart, it's going to be tough to really boost these numbers up, particularly in the next 2-3 years if AI becomes a bigger part of the overall economy. So the one thing that is going well, that's propping everything up, that makes, I think maybe the one gentleman feel good here, right, is that the consumer is still fine. You're good. Okay, thumbs up. He's still...
I do the same thing you do.
Okay. So the consumer is still okay. The problem, though, is that the consumer consumption is becoming much, much, much more reliant on high-income earners, right? So that's a problem for equity, right? But it's also a problem if all of a sudden we see some layoffs, if we see the stock market come down, right? So your restaurants are probably holding up okay, right? The juice shop is okay. You never talked about like revenue and finances, right? Because people are still spending, right? And I think this is the metric to watch, right? Do you see more consumer defaults on loans? Do you see credit card balances going up? Right now, everything seems okay, right? There's no recession on the horizon. Like when does this flip? And when it does, like what does that mean for small businesses in particular? Okay, last chart here. So the region grows in weird ways, right? And I think this is where you're a bit insulated because you don't have that big tech footprint. The region tends to have very high highs and then very low lows. In Sonoma County, you've really had kind of a steady growth period. But I think now with your population growth slowing, you've got all of these headwinds nationally, all these headwinds regionally, headwinds locally on population. The question becomes, and here's my moving question mark, right, to keep you awake. The question becomes like, what does this cycle look like? Is this a slow to no growth cycle? Which I think it is. And what does that mean, right? Like, how do your businesses do the same amount of revenue with fewer people? If you got higher costs, do those costs get passed on? You know, do they not get passed on, right? I think these are the questions that many people are trying to ask right now and figure out. And I will say, maybe just in closing here, we'll get to Q&A, right? I've said recession once, right? This is not a recession, right? We're just in a period where we've moved to slower growth. And I think the question for the county, for the cities, for all of you is, in a slower growth economy, where are the pockets that you want to focus, right? Like, how do you boost that growth and that potential? And I think, of course, it all comes back to people, right? It's how do you get more people here, whether that's housing, whether that's visitation, whether that's marketing, right? Like, these are the key questions that you should be thinking about. So with that, I've got more words, but let's go to questions. Only questions that are positive, though. The one gentleman that was doing well, you're gonna get to go first, sir. There's microphones out here somewhere.
So my name is Vernon Buttinger, and I have to say, you know, it says something that probably the one person from Mendocino County in the room is positive on Sonoma County. So I think you missed two areas that I see that are really bright for Sonoma County. First of all, like, this year was the first year that there was an actual population increase in Sonoma County. Even though it's still below 2019, the population in Sonoma County actually increased this year. And secondly, the major part of the increase, or all of the increase, came from foreign immigrants. And number three, I was surprised to find out that some of the types of income are actually increasing in Sonoma County this year, as opposed to previous years. So that's why I think that, and I think AI is going to be a huge boost to our economy. So maybe if you can comment on those points.
Isn't Sonoma County's population up just a few hundred people?
It's not down.
It's not down. Okay. You're being positive. Okay. So yeah, population numbers are trending better, right? And I had, here, we can even go back, right? Let's choose our own adventure here a little bit. I don't think you saw this, right? So these are your home prices, right? Your rental prices are way up, right? So that does tend to lead you to believe, and this is just in the past year, right? So these population numbers aren't even out. So that does tend you to believe that there are more people coming into that rental market, right? So I do think this population story has shifted. I didn't tell you anything about the demographics though, right? And the age of these people, and I think that's still a key challenge for this economy here. But you're right, population is not shrinking in the past year, but it's still, I wouldn't call it growing, right? And I think that's a question that I'm trying to grapple with is what does it mean to have like a no growth economy in terms of population? It clearly has challenges for school districts. It'll have challenges in terms of the healthcare system, but you all are still spending, right? Like you're going to wineries and restaurants and like all of this is still happening no matter how old you are, right? So it doesn't necessarily to me feel like there's a demographic cliff that's happening here. On AI, well, what can I say about AI? AI, I don't know what's going to happen with AI. I'm still trying to figure out if AI is a job generator or a job loser, net looking national economy. I can show you all the venture capital slides and everything in San Francisco and all of these companies that nobody's ever heard of because venture capital like is the city, right? AI is the city of San Francisco right now. The question, I think, is what does that mean for Sonoma County? I don't know. Maybe you've got positive thoughts on it. I don't know if the employment from that bleeds up into this county or if it's just the job loss that bleeds up.
Yeah, I think we talked about connecting before, and that's important.
We talked about connecting, and we talked about how important connecting was, and I think AI is going to be huge in connecting people, and I think that's one of the things that's really going to push the economy forward, just not in Sonoma, but in the United States.
Okay. Let's go to another question. You can choose out there.
I just wanted to know how we figure there's a population decline when it appears, at least in Santa Rosa, the freeways are getting more crowded. You have lots of apartment buildings that are all full you can't get into.
Yeah.
Rents are not coming down because there's not a glut.
Yeah.
So are we seeing a decrease in population in other parts of the county that are counteracting that growth? Because, I mean, even our own police department, I came here in 2009 and I could maybe count 5 police cars. Now there's probably more than, I don't know, 50 or 100. So I'm wondering how it is it just Santa Rosa is increasing and everything else is decreasing? They come up with a total loss in population.
I didn't pull all of the city level numbers. My instinct is there's a loss of population within the unincorporated area. I haven't seen what Santa Rosa is. And I think that the story though is less about like the last year, right? This population has been slowly coming back in the last year. My comparison though is to where you were in like 2017, 2016, right? And I think that that's where you're still seeing population loss in relatively large numbers. Because there was this entire narrative in the middle of the pandemic that like everybody left San Francisco and moved to a more suburban place. And that was partially true. And you did see a little bit of benefit from that, but it didn't counteract the effects that you saw, particularly in the lower income community, lower income households that moved out of the region or the state altogether, right? So I think you're gonna have anecdotes of apartment buildings filled up. Santa Rosa, I don't know the exact population numbers. You may be seeing increased population, but if I look broadly at the county or broadly at the region, the numbers are feeling better, but they're not the population trajectory we previously had. Go over.
Concerning your various slides on the employment trends, are those generally numbers of employees or workers, or are they factor dollar of wages or dollars spent on employment? And would you imagine the trends to be similar? What are you seeing in terms of wages and so forth?
Those would be number of people that we have on there, right? So I didn't show you the wages. Wages in the county have been going up and tracking with wages nationally. I do think there is this concern though that the wage growth stalls out and we continue to go into a relatively high inflation environment, right? So I didn't show you the wage growth, but I do think this county in particular, you have a mix of higher income individuals and people working maybe at the lower end of the economy and fewer people in the middle, right? And I think that's where you want to focus your wage growth thoughts, right? Is like, how do you build up that middle income, right? And like, how does the middle grow so that the economy, I showed you the US economy in terms of spending, right? You don't want to be reliant on high income earners only. You want to be reliant on people across the spectrum, right? So the wage growth still looks positive in the US, it still looks positive in the region. But I do think the concern is like, how do you, as a small business, if you bring it back to that, like how do you keep dealing with wage growth pressures, inflation pressures, if you can't really pass those prices on to the consumers, if the economy goes down. I'll make you walk across the entire stage here. No, we're going that way. Okay, all right.
Yes, I'd like to know if your data includes emergency and disasters like the fires and the earthquakes that we've had, and if that has been projected in terms of the rental and home prices and the population decrease/increase. What bearing does that have on these numbers?
Well, I do think you can go back to the population numbers, and a lot of it begins in 2017, right? So you lost housing stock there, right? A lot of that has come back, right? The construction sector had relatively good success here in this county. But I do think as you talk housing stock broadly, you talk about insurance costs, right? I think that all of those add up, right? And they're not necessarily captured in that home price chart. And I do wonder if that's part of your population issue, right? It's people regionally, nationally, they think Sonoma County, yeah, it's beautiful, like it's beautiful here. It has all the amenities I want. We've got the schools, you've got the wine, you've got the ocean, but can I get insurance? And like, will my house be susceptible to wildfire going forward?
And can I afford to live here?
And can you afford to live here? Yes, we showed you the $900,000 median home price. Like that's relatively good, but still $1 million, right? So if you look at the rest of the country, you can get the same thing for $400,000, right? So I think people are they're making those decisions on quality of life. We saw a lot of that happen during the pandemic, particularly because we saw job loss kind of at the bottom part of the income spectrum. So many of those people did have entrepreneurship, they had jobs to go to, but many of them also just left the state altogether, right? Like we saw that population loss in California for a couple of years. So if we're being positive, like things are tracking better, right? Things are tracking better, but I still think there's this cloud that hangs over the housing market here as we think about the climate, as you think about insurance. And I don't think the state has solved that insurance problem in particular.
Yeah, so then it makes it look like it's a false positive, so to speak.
I'm trying to be positive though.
Yes, we're positive, absolutely.
Yeah. So those are clear challenges, right? And I do think, just coming from, thinking of where I live in the East Bay, right? Like I think my wife would move here in a heartbeat. I think she said that, but she's like, there's wildfires and like
Yeah.
we don't want to, deal with that, right? So you're not going to change that overnight. You may never really change that, right? That just maybe that's what happens in Sonoma County. But you've got to somehow, build in those protections, build that into some of these charts, right? As you're thinking about quality of life, that is a cost to folks in the county.
Good morning. Touching back on that kind of housing, median housing price of under 900,000, and knowing that people are back in the office much more, not working away from home as much, and people want to work where they live. And we know that, let's say, AI and tech in general are in close proximity. What do we do as a county to really position ourselves to attract either subsidiaries or new entrepreneurs who are opening new tech startups to position themselves in Sonoma County, have that more, let's say, affordable living for employees? What do we do as a county to really attract that?
Yeah, I think part of that is on the marketing of the place, right? I use the example of the Tri-Valley, like Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore. Like it's not as nice as it is here. It has some wine. It's probably not as good. But don't quote me on that. Like they've created this ecosystem where they've got these entrepreneur networks, right? And they've got the venture capital network, and they have all the things that are now built in if you wanted to start a company in that area. And I think you have that here too, right? But it's really, I think it's selling that, right? And saying that this place is open for business. And look at all the benefits that we have. And I think that's maybe what gets lost a little bit. It's that people that are starting those new tech companies, they're not really thinking like, hey, Sonoma County is the place to go. But you got to get one, right? And then you really sell that, and it kind of snowballs on itself, right? So I think that's the piece that really hang your hat on. It's just like, what are you marketing? And it's the beauty of the place, right? It's the educational attainment of the place, right? It's all those things. But I think it gets lost a little bit when everyone's like Silicon Valley, AI, like everything's got to go there. And we've been having this conversation for decades now, right? Like how does that tech ecosystem grow? And I think now may be the time, right? Like San Francisco is weak, Silicon Valley is weak, but how do you position yourself for that job growth? I don't have the answer, but I think that's eventually where you want to go. It's like, how do you capture more of those AI, more of those tech jobs, right? Because you get more people, right? You can support all the business that you heard from today. So I think that's it, right? I think I ended positively, right?
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you to Nico, all of our panelists, all of you for joining us here today. It's truly appreciated. It's amazing to be at the end of an event and see so many chairs still filled. So that's just absolutely fantastic. It makes my day, to be perfectly honest with you. So again, thank you for being here today. Go out and have a wonderful day.